Hi there, folks. How we doing? This is going to be a slight deviation in format from the last video. Let me know how you feel about it. Still experimenting with this series. But I figured I'd show you guys some of the endgame footage that I've gotten out of the Viper Strike build so far, and we're going to lead with the not so good. This build is very polarized in terms of what endgame bosses it handles well and which it handles poorly, and Eradicator is probably one of the most annoying ones. Eradicator and Al-Hazmin. Al-Hazmin is also fairly problematic for the build, as he's got a habit of running away every time you get in melee range to try and strike him. But a few of the major weaknesses of the build, as you're seeing in this fight here, are things like single target raw sustain against just one dude, because we don't have massive leech, we don't have something like agnostic. I've got life gained on hit, but we're not something like molten strike that cheeses out dozens and dozens of hits from every attack. I need to actually, fairly hit a lot, if that makes sense. And then, most egregiously in this fight in particular, enemies with immunity phases, because this build does rely on getting lots of poison stacks on an enemy and ramping its damage quickly over time, or slowly, depending on how good the gear is and how annoying the boss fight is. And yeah, Eradicator likes to just say goodbye to all my poison stacks, just get rid of them. Not to mention the fact that I also have some excellent attack mitigation and physical mitigation, but not quite as good spell or ally damage mitigation, which is something I'm looking to cover over by fitting Divine Flesh into the build, which will make a fight like this much, much easier and less risky. But, Viper Strike has its weaknesses just kind of inherently. That said, I think with brute force damage, because this version of the build you're seeing here is a little bit weaker on the damage side, there's a lot of significant upgrades I can still get. Things like Frenzy Charge Gen and Single Target from the chest piece, things like a faster Ailment Watcher's Eye, which I just picked up at the end of the stream today and is not active in this video here. Things like a better dot multi roll on a piece of gear or two. I think I can technically get dot multi on my weapon. There's a number of different places where I can improve the gear, but honestly, I think even if we brute force a lot of damage out of the skill, it's still going to feel uncomfortable against bosses that have a lot of spell damage and like to do that he just did right there. I remember being so frustrated because we had almost gotten this man killed, and then he's just like, nope, I'm invulnerable, all of your poisons meant nothing. So yeah, Eradicator is not exactly the best fight, but I do take him down. It was satisfying in the end to get the kill. And the kinds of fights where it does excel, I will now show you. Minotaur is an absolute breeze. The man has nothing but attack-based hits, like I mentioned. Those are some of the easiest ones for us to deal with, and also their high physical damage. And between Fortify and Wind Dancer and Endurance Charge Gen from Enduring Cry and a Basalt Flask and just all sorts of stuff to deal with specifically attack physical hits, we do a really good job of mitigating that. And then he also doesn't have immunity phases, so he just kind of sits there and lets me build a lot of poisons on him. So while the DPS in this particular clip is nothing insanely impressive, it's certainly good enough that I'm perfectly safe to basically just sit there, face tank him through the fight, and have absolutely no worries at all. So with that in mind, I'm thinking that the endgame content I might go for, the bosses I might lop off the list with this character, should probably fit that kind of bill. So I'm not thinking something like Cyrus will be best, as he's extremely mobile, which is unfortunate for Viper Strike. He also has a lot of immunity phases, and in the final phase, I believe when he does some of his things like splitting into clones or even starting the spinny beam, he does go immune for a brief moment, which would cleanse off my poison stacks. So Cyrus is probably a no-go for this build, but something like Simulacrum, well, that could be pretty good. Both Kosis and the other one, Omniphobia, don't have any sort of immunity phases at all. They both really want you to be next to them, actually. They can be pretty rippy if you're near them, but it's also the easiest place to dodge their abilities if you just circle strafe around them close up. And the build has a lot of what I want to call term rolling mitigation, where you have these buffs that are going and refreshing themselves constantly so long as you're killing stuff and hitting stuff. And so the build is really, really fast and tanky and high avoidance, high mitigation while it's killing things, which suits Simulacrum really well. So if I can get some of those damage upgrades, I think I'll have the DPS for it, and I think this might be the build of the lot to take down 2020 Simulacrum and Kosis. But as far as the second challenge I want to take on, I'm not really sure what would fit that build best. Possibly something like Elder, but that's one of the easier fights, so I was going to leave it for a less capable build. I'm actually pretty confident in Viper Strike, so I think maybe that's better to leave for something I'm less confident in, like Glacial Hammer. But that said, I have rambled on a little bit longer than I anticipated. I'll throw in some extra boss footage that I'm sure you're watching while I'm talking right now. Maybe a Drox kill. Drox is also a pushover. Drox is basically new Minotaur, so he just kind of sits there and takes it, and then when he pops out of his invulnerability phase, he just fucking dies, just falls over. So yeah, Viper Strike's going well. Got a few key upgrades to get, but I think in a couple days we'll probably be taking down a few bosses with this and knocking some names off the list. I have full confidence. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.